I got home early that night, earlier than expected. My last meeting was canceled unexpectedly, and I found myself driving aimlessly through the city before heading back to the apartment. No calls, no warning. Something about the quiet freedom of that moment felt good. But underneath, buried beneath traffic lights and a fading sunset, was a feeling I couldn't name yet. Not suspicion, not quite. Just off. It wasn't until I stepped into the building that I noticed it. That flicker. The subtle feeling that I was walking in on something. My shoes echoed softly in the hallway. I remember hearing the faint sound of music coming from behind our door, Molly's favorite playlist, the one she usually reserved for late dinners or carefully curated company. Soft jazz. Smooth and low. Then came laughter, male laughter, followed by hurried footsteps. I paused, hand on the door handle. That sound, it didn't belong. Our home wasn't a place filled with voices anymore. Not recently, anyway. The past few months had been quiet between us, our conversations reduced to daily logistics and tired sighs. We hadn't laughed together like that in weeks. I turned the key and pushed the door open quietly. What I saw didn't scream betrayal at first. It whispered it. There was a man in our living room. Tall, sharply dressed in business casual. Mid-30s, hair slicked back with a precision that suggested either vanity or habit. He was shrugging on his jacket as if caught in the middle of leaving. His movements were rushed but composed, like someone used to awkward exits. And then there was Molly. My wife. She was standing near the hallway mirror, carefully reapplying her lipstick. Her reflection looked calm. Too calm. 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table. One was nearly empty, the rim marked with a faint coral pink imprint. Her shade. A bottle of unopened sparkling water sat beside them like a prop. Molly turned slightly when she heard the door close behind me. "Oh," she said, as casually as if I'd just come home from work at the usual time. "Joel, you're home early." The man, clearly startled by my presence, muttered something about a contract file and walked toward the door, not quite making eye contact with me. He offered a stiff nod before disappearing through the hallway. I watched him go, silent. I didn't move. My eyes were fixed on her. She dabbed at the corner of her mouth with a tissue and turned to face me fully, one hand still holding the lipstick tube like a security blanket. "That was James," she said evenly. "He's a real estate consultant I've been talking to. I had him come by to help me look through office paperwork." "Paperwork?" I asked, glancing at the glasses. "Over wine?" Her expression didn't change. "It was just a casual meeting. He offered to bring a bottle. I thought it would make it less formal." I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, taking it all in, the barely touched wine, the soft music, her tone. Everything about the moment felt staged. Not rushed. Not clumsy like a mistake. Rehearsed. My mind flashed to the last few weeks. The sudden meetings she had, the vague descriptions of networking and building new partnerships. The locked phone. The guarded energy. The way she stopped reaching for my hand in bed. How she turned away in her sleep now. I tried to speak, but the words felt stuck in my throat. "You could have told me," I said finally. "Told you what?" she asked, still calm. "That I invited someone over to help me with a commercial lease?" I didn't think it was a big deal. Her logic sounded reasonable on the surface. But it was the absence of surprise in her voice that got me. No apology for not mentioning it. No nervous laughter or explanations. Just straight, practiced lines. Lines that felt memorized. "Why didn't you meet at his office?" I asked. She smiled politely. "Because I'm the one setting up the space. He needed to see the paperwork I keep here." I nodded, but I could feel something splintering inside me. The air between us was still. Too still. I could hear the clink of her lipstick cap snapping shut. That tiny sound felt like the loudest thing in the room. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to walk over, kiss her cheek, and tell myself I was overthinking it. But the way she looked at me, that practiced calm, that strategic smile, it wasn't the Molly I married. She used to rush to the door when I came home early. She used to beam, arms wrapping around my neck, excited to have more time together. That version of her hadn't been around in months. And the one standing in front of me? She was a stranger in familiar skin. "I didn't mean to surprise you," she said, turning toward the kitchen. "I thought you had a late dinner meeting." "I did," I said. "It got canceled." She nodded, pouring herself a glass of water like this was any other Thursday night. I stood there for another moment, still not moving, still watching her. I felt like a spectator in my own life, watching someone else's script play out. Molly rinsed her glass, wiped her hands on a towel, and then looked back at me, her expression neutral. "You okay?" she asked. "No, not even close." "Yeah." I lied. "Just tired." She gave a small nod and walked past me toward the bedroom. No kiss. No, I missed you. Just silence. I stayed in the living room, staring at those two glasses. One of them had lipstick. The other didn't. And just like that, I knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Molly had gone to bed before me, claiming a headache. She barely looked at me as she pulled the sheets over herself. Her back turned before I even entered the room. That used to mean she was upset. Now it felt like default. I lay on the couch with my arm draped over my eyes, trying not to drown in the thoughts running circles in my head. The image of James, the mystery man from earlier, lingered like a ghost. The way he had slipped out of our apartment without looking me in the eye. The way Molly hadn't fumbled for an excuse or even seemed nervous. It wasn't just tonight. If I was being honest with myself, the unease had been building for weeks, maybe months. I'd just been too tired or too afraid to admit it. The first red flag had come a month ago when Molly mentioned she was working on something new. A passion project, she called it. With a few people I met through a startup mixer. That phrase alone felt strange coming from her. Molly had always been sharp, detail-oriented, exact. She didn't dabble. But suddenly she was vague, talking about networking events and casual meetups, like they were spontaneous, unimportant things. I had smiled, told her I was proud of her. I wanted to be. I really did. But slowly things shifted. She started dressing differently for these so-called meetups. Heels a little higher, makeup a little bolder, perfume a little heavier. She claimed it was just about confidence. I didn't question it then. I didn't want to be that guy. Controlling, insecure, jealous. I let it go. But now, those memories started clicking together like puzzle pieces I'd been ignoring on the table. The networking events were almost always on weeknights, Wednesdays mostly. She'd leave at 6 p.m. sharp and wouldn't return until close to midnight. When I'd ask where she'd been, the answers were always the same: a wine bar downtown, or some co-working space near the pier. Sometimes she said the names so fast, I couldn't even remember them after. Other times, she'd laugh and wave it off. Oh, you wouldn't know the place. Once or twice, I'd noticed unfamiliar cologne on her when she came home. It was faint, just enough to make me think I imagined it. The first time, she hugged me and I caught the scent. My stomach twisted, but she brushed it off when I asked. Must have been someone at the bar, she said, laughing like I was being silly. God, Joel. It's not like I was making out with anyone. I had forced a laugh. She kissed my cheek and said she was going to shower. I didn't press. Now I hated myself for not pressing. Then there was the notebook. About a week ago, I had taken her car to get the oil changed. She'd left it with me because I had the day off and she was running late for a meeting. While I waited for the mechanic to finish, I cleaned up the passenger seat and found a small leather notebook wedged between the center console and her seat. It was hers. I recognized the way she looped her L's and dotted her I's with tiny circles. The pages weren't filled with to-do lists or schedules like I expected. Instead, they were full of phrases. Strange ones. Investor dinner. Keep it light. Mention yoga retreat. Keep it vague. One page had a list of initials with vague notes beside them. J. Text after 9 p.m. only. R. Aggressive. Avoid meeting solo. And then I saw it. A name underlined 3 times. James. Circled. Next to it, she had drawn a small heart. I stared at the page for a long time. When she came home that night, I didn't say a word about it. I slid the notebook back where I found it before she even knew I had seen it. I don't know why. Maybe I was still holding on to the hope that I was wrong. That this was some kind of misunderstanding. That I didn't already know what I knew. That night, she came home late again, kissed my forehead, and told me she was tired. I think something broke inside me right then. After she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen and opened my laptop. I checked her social media accounts. Nothing unusual. She rarely posted, and when she did, it was always work-related. But her stories, those brief **TS of her life, had become strangely filtered, as if curated for someone else. Pictures of rooftops with champagne, dimly lit lounges, captions that read, closing deals or making moves. But I wasn't in a single one of them. She'd stopped tagging me in anything months ago. I hadn't thought much of it then, neither of us were big on sharing. But looking back, it wasn't about privacy. It was about secrecy. Later that night, I walked past our bedroom and saw the glow of her phone screen reflecting off the wall. She was curled up with her back to me, typing rapidly. I waited, watched. After a moment, the screen dimmed. She slipped the phone under her pillow and turned over. When I finally slid into bed, she was already pretending to be asleep. That next morning, she left earlier than usual. Said she had a coffee meeting with a prospective business partner. It's a new contact, she said, pouring her coffee into a to-go tumbler. James might come too. He's been helping me out with the lease stuff. I nodded. My hands were trembling, but I kept my face calm. After she left, I walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the pillow she had hidden her phone under. Everything about her felt distant now. Mechanical. I tried to remember the last time she reached for my hand without being prompted. The last time she laughed at something I said without checking her phone 2 seconds later. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much space had grown between us. Quietly. Strategically. And now everything was starting to make sense. The secrecy. The late nights. The empty words. The unfamiliar perfume. The puzzle was no longer scattered. It was almost complete. I just needed one more piece. That's when I made the decision to dig deeper. I didn't want to believe it. Even with the late nights, the new passwords, the notebook, the name circled in ink, I still held on to a shred of hope that I was wrong. That somehow all of it would turn out to be a misunderstanding, a stretch of paranoia brought on by fatigue and stress. That Molly wouldn't do something like this. Not her. Not us. But something in me shifted after that morning, the one where she mentioned James again, so casually, like he'd always been part of our lives. Like I was supposed to accept that this man just waltzed into our marriage and started helping her with things she never even talked to me about. I knew then I couldn't trust her words anymore. So I turned to facts. It started with a name, James, and a contract. I remembered, a few weeks back, Molly had told me she was entering a partnership with a small real estate firm. Something about leasing office space for her consulting startup. At the time, I nodded along, half listening as I packed my own work bag. She mentioned a company name, Wyeth and Gold Property Solutions. It sounded fake even then, like a name picked from a corporate name generator. I hadn't thought to question it. But now I did. I dug through my old emails until I found the one she had forwarded months ago, the only email that ever mentioned that company. Attached was a PDF contract she claimed to have reviewed. The header looked official enough. But the signature at the bottom? It wasn't hers. At least, it didn't look like hers. I scanned the document, rereading the names and noticing small things I hadn't paid attention to before, like the fact that her company wasn't listed under any state registry, or that the contact information pointed to a generic Gmail address instead of a corporate domain. There were too many inconsistencies to ignore now. I reached out to a friend of mine from college, Daniel. He worked in commercial real estate and owed me a favor from back in the day. I forwarded the contract and asked if he'd ever heard of the company. He responded 2 hours later. That firm doesn't exist. Not officially, anyway. No listings, no leases under that name. You sure this is real? I stared at his message. My stomach dropped. I spent the next day calling every number I could find that might be connected to Molly's new venture. Some numbers went straight to voicemail. Others were disconnected. One person answered briefly, and when I mentioned Molly's name, they hung up. That was enough for me. I contacted a private investigator that night. His name was Ryan. He didn't ask a lot of questions. Just facts. He was clinical, professional, someone who had seen enough to know when someone was lying. I gave him everything, names, addresses, dates, even the notebook page I'd photographed. He took it all in calmly, nodded once, and said, "Give me a week." And that was it. I went home and tried to pretend my life wasn't unraveling by the hour. Molly came home that night humming. She dropped her bag by the door, slipped off her heels, and walked over to kiss me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. She smelled like wine. Something expensive. And something else I couldn't quite place, saffron, maybe? Or cardamom. A scent that didn't belong to our home, to our life. She poured herself another glass and sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Big day?" I asked. She nodded, smiling like a kid who'd gotten away with skipping school. "Very productive. James really came through with a few new leads. We're looking at a space in Bellevue, can you believe it?" "Bellevue," I repeated. "That's far." She waved it off. "Not too far. And the views are amazing. It'll be worth it." I watched her talk, wondering who she was performing for now. Me? Or herself? I wanted to scream, to grab the wineglass from her hand and ask her outright, "Who is he to you, really?" But I didn't. Not yet. I waited. And a week later, Ryan delivered. He met me at a neutral spot, a cafe near the waterfront, quiet and tucked away from the bustle of downtown. He wore sunglasses and a windbreaker like some old-school detective cliché, but I didn't care. He slid a manila folder across the table. "You were right to be suspicious." I opened it slowly. The first photo hit like a punch to the gut. Molly, stepping out of a hotel lobby in Bellevue. Her arm linked with James. Her head tilted toward him, laughing. Not networking. Not professional. An asterisk mate. The second photo showed them in the parking lot. His hand on her waist. Her hand on his chest. They kissed. No hesitation. No guilt. The third photo, they were checking in at the front desk. No bags, just smiles. Room number, 812. Time stamped, for 46 p.m. They left the next morning, according to Ryan's report. He had more photos, more than I could look at in one sitting. Some from a week ago. Some from last night. James Thompson, Ryan said. Real estate background. Worked for a firm 5 years ago, nothing recent. No license. The company name you gave me doesn't exist. Looks like it's all just a front. I nodded slowly, the folder still open in my lap. Everything I had feared was now laid out in high-resolution color. I could see the way her fingers clung to his coat, the way her face softened around him. It was worse than I had imagined, not because of the physicality, but because of how easy it seemed for her. Effortless. Like she hadn't even thought twice. "She's been using these hotel stays as cover for work trips," Ryan added. I cross-checked her claimed travel dates with the hotels. This wasn't the first time. I closed the folder and leaned back, feeling the weight of something irreversible settle into my bones. That night, I sat in our apartment and stared at her across the dinner table. She talked about flooring options. I pretended to listen. I nodded at the right times. I smiled when she smiled. But in my mind, I was back in that parking lot in Bellevue, watching her kiss a man she told me was just a consultant. And I knew without a doubt that everything we were, everything we had been, was gone. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I began preparing for the end. From the outside, nothing changed. I still made the coffee in the mornings. Still left the porch light on when Molly texted that she'd be home late. Still smiled when her friends came over and asked about her business adventures. Still nodded when she talked about the next phase of her so-called consulting firm. But on the inside, everything was shifting. The folder Ryan had handed me stayed locked in my desk drawer. I didn't look at it again after that first night. I didn't need to. The images were burned into my memory. I could close my eyes and see her in that parking lot, his hand at the small of her back, her lips brushing his in the soft, practiced way she used to kiss me. No more guessing. No more paranoia. Just cold, clean confirmation. And with that came clarity. I didn't rage. I didn't explode. I didn't pack a bag and slam the door behind me. Instead, I began preparing to leave in silence. Quietly. Intentionally. Strategically. The same way she had betrayed me. It started with money. I opened a new bank account in my name, only one she had no access to. I began shifting small amounts from our joint account, nothing noticeable at first. I sold a few stocks, cashed out my old mutual fund from before the marriage. Set up a P.O. box. Changed the password on my cloud drive. Backed up all of our documents, taxes, titles, account statements, and uploaded them to a secure drive she didn't know existed. Then I began documenting everything. I created a private folder labeled Exit Plan and filled it with **TS, email printouts, copies of hotel bookings, timestamped photos. Ryan had provided more than enough, but I wanted my own trail. My own armor. The hardest part was pretending. Pretending to care when she asked about my day. Pretending to laugh when she made a sarcastic comment about her overbooked week. Pretending not to notice the way her phone buzzed late at night and how she'd angle it away from me on instinct. It felt like playing a part in someone else's movie, like I had become a ghost in my own home. Our conversations dwindled to nothing more than surface-level chatter. Grocery lists. Errands. Dinner. It was all transactional now. Her body was here, but her mind, her attention, her heart, they were elsewhere. With him. And yet, she still slept in our bed. There were nights she'd reach for me, out of habit more than desire, and I'd pretend to be asleep. Her hand would linger on my shoulder for a moment, then retreat. I'd hear her sigh, then turn away, pulling the comforter with her. That became the rhythm. In the meantime, I quietly rebuilt myself. I started running again. Woke up early each morning, laced up my sneakers, and jogged through the still dark neighborhood streets. At first, it felt like punishment, my lungs burning, my legs sore. But soon it became something else. A reclaiming. A small part of me that wasn't touched by her betrayal. I stopped waiting for her. I used to make her coffee each morning, 2 creams, 1 sugar, just the way she liked it. I stopped. I used to ask about her meetings. I stopped. I used to text her midday just to say I loved her. That stopped too. She noticed, eventually. "You okay?" she asked one evening, her voice cautious. I looked up from my laptop, expression calm. "Yeah. Just tired." That was all it took. She nodded, satisfied with the answer. Maybe even relieved that I wasn't prying. In truth, I had never been more alert in my life. The day I met with a divorce attorney, it was pouring rain. I remember because Molly had texted that morning saying she was staying late in Bellevue again. Something about checking out furniture for the new office. I had nodded and replied, "Sounds exciting." The attorney, Sandra, was sharp-eyed and unflinching. She asked the hard questions first. How long had it been going on? Did I have proof? What assets were in my name? Was there a prenup? I answered every one. She nodded through my story, then leaned back in her chair and said, "You've done more prep than most people do after filing. If everything you've told me is verifiable, this won't be a clean fight, but it'll be winnable." That word stuck with me. Winnable. Not fair. Not easy. Winnable. "I don't want revenge," I told her. "I just want out. I want a clean break." "Then we'll make it clean," she said. "But you have to be ready. People like your wife, they don't usually let go without a scene." I nodded. I already knew that. I left her office with the first draft of the petition in hand, neatly folded inside a plain manila envelope. I drove home in silence, windshield wipers beating in rhythm, my knuckles white around the steering wheel. Molly wasn't home when I got there. A note on the fridge said, "Don't wait up. Networking drinks tonight." I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in the quiet, staring at that note. The last time she'd left me a handwritten message, it had been something sweet. "Love you, be safe," scrawled with a heart. That had been over a year ago. Now it was just logistics. That night, I stood in our walk-in closet and stared at her side, dozens of shoes, jackets, dresses carefully organized by color. It struck me then how much space she took up. Not just physically, but in everything. Her style dictated our furniture. Her routines dictated our weekends. Her ambition dictated our future. And I had gone along with it because I thought that's what love was. Now I saw it for what it had become, accommodation. At my own expense. I picked up a dress she'd worn on our anniversary. Ran my fingers over the silk. I didn't feel anything. No ache, no warmth. Just absence. Like the dress belonged to someone I'd once known. In the following days, I quietly withdrew from her orbit. I spent more time outside the house, coffee shops, bookstores, anywhere that wasn't stained by her perfume. I started journaling, trying to rediscover what I liked. Who I was. It felt strange at first to have that space again. But then it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. The moment that cemented it came unexpectedly. I was loading groceries into the car one Saturday when I saw her. Not Molly. Them. Molly and James. Together. At a boutique market on the other side of town. She was holding a bag of oranges. He was standing close, too close. They weren't touching, but the space between them was charged. Familiar. She saw me. Our eyes locked across the parking lot. And for the first time I saw it, something in her face. Not guilt. Not panic. Recognition. She didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just looked away. That was when I knew. She wasn't going to come clean. She was going to keep pretending, right up until I forced the truth into the light. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Not yet. I went home, put the groceries away, and reviewed my exit plan one final time. Bank accounts secured. Documents backed up. Legal draft reviewed. Evidence organized. I sat down at the kitchen table, poured myself a coffee, black now, no sugar, no cream, and waited. Not for her. For the moment I was ready to end it all. I delivered the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning. No build-up. No warning. Just the sharp, clean snap of a sealed envelope slid across our dining table, landing with a soft thud that echoed louder than anything else I could have said. Molly had just come back from another strategy breakfast. She wore one of her power blazers and carried the same leather tote she always claimed was too expensive to ruin with anything as ordinary as receipts. When she saw the envelope, she paused just for a second before setting her bag down slowly. "What's this?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "You already know," I replied. She stared at it like it was radioactive. Like touching it might infect her with something she didn't want to admit. Her fingers hovered over the flap, but she didn't open it, not right away. "You're overreacting," she said finally, voice low. "I'm reacting exactly the right amount," I answered. That was when the mask slipped. Her lips parted just slightly, her breath catching. She wasn't prepared for this. Not for the coldness. Not for the silence. She had expected confrontation. Accusations. Maybe even a last-ditch emotional plea. But not this. Not composure. I watched her hands tremble slightly as she picked up the envelope and opened it. She scanned the first few lines, petition for dissolution of marriage, and her face fell. "You're serious," she said, almost to herself. "I am." She sat down slowly. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just stared at the paper like it had personally betrayed her. "This is dramatic," she muttered, the sarcasm laced into her voice like a reflex. "What's dramatic is you sneaking off to hotels with another man and thinking I wouldn't notice." She flinched. The words had weight. I had never used them before, not directly. Until that moment, everything between us had been hints, dodged truths, passive silence. But now it was real. Defined. Named. "You're wrong about that," she said quietly. I reached into my folder and pulled out a single photograph. I laid it face up on the table between us. Molly looked down at it. Her eyes narrowed. Then something in her face collapsed. She didn't try to deny it again. Instead, she shifted tactics. "I didn't think we were still us anymore," she said. "Not for a long time." "So you made that decision for both of us?" "No," she said. "I just stopped waiting for you to notice." She was going to justify it. Rationalize the betrayal. Explain it with poetic phrasing about loneliness and disconnection. But I'd done the math. I'd reviewed the timelines. This wasn't about losing connection. It wasn't even about feeling unloved. It was about entitlement. About desire without consequence. "You could have talked to me," I said. "You could have asked for therapy. Space. Time. A trial separation. But instead you lied. Over and over." "I didn't lie," she snapped. "I didn't tell you everything, but that's not the same." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? You didn't exactly make it easy to talk to you," she said. "You were always buried in work or zoning out. When was the last time you even asked me how I was doing? When was the last time your answer would have been honest?" Her mouth opened, then shut again. Silence. It was the first time I saw her shrink back, not out of guilt, but because she knew she couldn't spin this one. She tried again later that night. I was on the porch, sipping coffee and watching the streetlights flicker when she stepped outside, barefoot, arms wrapped around herself. "I don't want to fight," she said, sitting beside me. "We're not fighting," I replied. "We're ending." "I never wanted it to get here, Joel." "Neither did I." She reached for my hand. I didn't move. "You're really doing this?" she whispered. "After everything?" "Because of everything." The days that followed were a masterclass in role reversal. I was the one calm-centered strategic. Molly, who used to be the composed one, the planner, the scheduler, the always prepared executive, was unraveling. She started making noise. Talking to friends. Spinning narratives. By Thursday, I received a text from one of our mutual acquaintances. "Hey man, sorry to hear what's going on. Just wanted to say I'm here if you need anything." What was he talking about? I scrolled up. Then I saw it. A group chat where Molly had dropped a carefully worded message, painting me as emotionally cold, controlling, and reactive. She made it sound like I had suddenly snapped, blindsided her with paperwork, and refused to work on things. It was almost admirable, the level of projection. But I was ready for this too. The next day, my attorney sent notice to her legal team detailing our prepared counters, a record of text messages, photos, travel records, phone logs. All neatly organized, time-stamped, cross-referenced. Evidence that painted a very different picture than the one she had started distributing to our social circle. Molly's strategy had always relied on me being passive. Quiet. Unwilling to call her bluff. Now, she was seeing the other version of me. She tried once more, this time with performance. I came home from a run to find her sitting on the floor of the living room, a photo album open on her lap. Old Polaroids spilled across the carpet, our honeymoon, our first apartment, a blurry selfie from our 3rd anniversary. "I don't know what to do without this," she said quietly. Her voice shook just enough to seem accidental. "You already did something without it," I said. She blinked. "What happened to you, Joel?" "You did," I answered. She didn't cry, not really. She made the sound of crying, the breathy exhales, the long pauses, but her eyes stayed dry. Her hand moved to mine again. "I could fix it," she whispered. "I could cut him off. Start over. We could go back to the beginning." "There is no beginning anymore," I said. "Only what comes after." That was the night she left the house voluntarily for the first time since this started. Just one bag. One duffel. She claimed she needed space to think things through. I nodded. I didn't ask where she was going. I already knew. The next morning I called Sandra and told her to proceed. Molly returned 2 days later with a tight smile and 3 counterclaims in hand: emotional abandonment, financial withholding, and marital neglect. She wasn't going quietly. I expected that. But I was ready. When her attorney reached out demanding mediation with her proposed settlement, half the joint assets, full ownership of her business income, and a claim on the apartment, I sent back a single-word reply. Declined. The proof was already in motion. The court date was set. She blinked first. I watched her go from icy composure to restless maneuvering, trying to gain back footing in a fight she had started and thought she could control. But she underestimated something vital. I had been preparing in silence while she had been performing. And now the silence was over. The court didn't take long to see the truth. From the moment the hearings began, it was clear who had come prepared and who hadn't. My attorney laid out the evidence like a slow, deliberate performance: financial statements, **TS, call logs, hotel records. All lined up. All dated. All indisputable. Molly tried to maintain her composure, but it cracked with each new detail. When the judge asked about the Bellevue Hotel, she stammered something about networking gone awry, but her voice shook. The photos, her laughing, holding hands with James, checking into the room, told a different story. Her real estate consultant never appeared. His legal team filed a motion distancing him from her case entirely. And with that, her narrative collapsed. The judge wasn't unkind, just unmoved. Her counterclaims, emotional neglect, manipulation, financial withholding, were dismissed. Too vague. No evidence. The court ruled that she had acted in bad faith by attempting to obscure her extramarital relationship under the guise of business. I retained the apartment, my accounts, my name. She walked out with her attorney and no eye contact. Just silence. That's how a 10-year relationship ended. Not with a final scream or plea, but with paperwork and a verdict. After everything, I left the city. I moved to a small town near Taos, quiet, unhurried, the kind of place where people say hello at the grocery store and actually mean it. I found a house on the edge of town with wide windows and a view of the mountains. No traffic. No noise. Just space. I took a remote job with fewer meetings and more time outdoors. I started hiking, writing, breathing. I adopted a dog, a rescue mutt with anxious eyes and a heart of gold. I named him Finn. He became my daily reminder that loyalty still exists. Molly tried to reach out once. A single message months after the decree: "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Closure didn't come from revenge or winning in court. It came from knowing I had seen the truth and chosen myself. Sometimes I think about that moment, the one where she told me I was no competition. She said it offhand, laughing with James in a message I wasn't meant to see. She didn't know even then that I already had the contract in hand, that I had already seen the proof. That moment, her power move, was actually her last mistake, because it showed me who she was and reminded me of who I am. I don't carry anger anymore, just clarity. That was the real win. That was the beginning.